Hi, everyone. So, this is our final week talking about curiosity. And this week, we're talking about flying in the flow. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, maybe you've noticed over however many years you've been alive, but when Canadian geese migrate, they tend to fly in that V formation. And I can pull that back up for just a second. Hold on just a moment. So they tend to fly in that V formation. Now, why do they do that? Well, the short answer is that it reduces wind resistance. So when they're flying really long distances, which Canadian geese are as they migrate, then that first goose, the one in the very front, is taking a lot of the wind resistance. And so they fly in this V formation to make it easier. And as they move and flow, as one goose gets tired, it falls to the back and another one takes the lead in the front. So you might say, what does this so you could say, the geese are flying in the flow, that they are using one another to be in the flow, to allow everybody to be in this community and really take up the slack for one another. So not each and every individual goose is having to do all of the work to fly all the way to where they're going, right? Instead, when they do it as a group, it lessens the workload for everyone. So you might be asking yourself, okay, yeah, fantastic, Reverend Chris, flying in the flow, got it. What does that have to do with curiosity? That is a really good question. And you know what it has to do is that in order for us to be in community, in order for us to show up for one another in the way that geese do, so that we can rely on one another in such a way that it becomes possible for us to take the workload off of each other, we have to show up to one another with curiosity. We have to show up understanding that we can't fully know what's going on with that other person, or why they are doing the things they're doing, or why they're showing up the way they're showing up, or what their culture is, or their history, or their family patterns, or belief systems, or what they picked up in childhood, or any of that. And so, if we're unwilling to show up to one another with curiosity, then we aren't going to be able to form that connection, that community that we need, quote unquote need, to be able to lighten the load for one another. If we're constantly showing up to one another with judgment and knowing all of the answers and having the right way to do things, how are we going to allow one another to step in and to help each other? When we show up to community with all of the right answers and with all of the know-how, then it actually heightens the workload for everyone. If every single person comes in knowing exactly what they think should be done in this circumstance, then there's bickering and there's fighting and there's judgment and there's arguing and nothing gets done, and it's this clashing and nothing ever melds. There's no synergy or synchronicity or anything like that. That becomes so much harder than just going it alone. And I think that we all have experiences of that. And the first thing that comes to my mind is school group projects. Oh my gosh, I hated school group projects, because what would inevitably happen, because I was one of the smart kids, is I would get partnered with people that would do nothing, or at least we'd have that one kid that would do nothing. And everybody had their own idea, and everybody wanted to do their own idea except for that one kid that wanted to do nothing, right? And then we divvy up all of the work, and inevitably, one or all of the group would not follow through on their part of the group project. And I would be stuck doing half or three quarters or even the whole project because I was so scared of getting a bad grade. It was awful. I hated group projects. And so I think if we have that mentality going into it, it's going to be harder for us to show up as adults into these spaces of community and connection, because our mental equivalent is, oh God, group projects. I never again want to do another group project. And yet, there's something else that can be created. There is a way to show up to one another and to have our group project of spiritual community or whatever it is, to have that be this amazing, incredible experience of synchronicity and generosity and everybody working together in such a way that the workload is exponentially decreased for each and every person. And I think that the number one way that that can happen is through curiosity, is through showing up with that beginner's mind, with that idea of surrender and being in the flow and trusting the process and trusting when that other goose is up there leading that they're still going in the right direction. And maybe it's not exactly the path that you would have taken. You would have, gone a different way on the Google Maps, but you're still going to get there in the end. And when we can step back and we can show up with that curiosity and that sort of mentality of, tell me more. Why do you want to do it that way? All of the sudden, something greater than we could possibly imagine on our own is created. So that to me is what flying in the flow is. So if you want to hear more about this, come check us out this Sunday. We have one final week with Captain Curioso, and I'm sure she's going to have a lot to say on this subject as well. I love you all.